Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. You know what we'll talk about today? Trump's tariffs. He's targeted everyone, friends and foes, even islands where no one lives. There's a lot of conversation around this move, a lot of analysis and projections. Tonight, we'll try to break it down for you. What exactly has Donald Trump done? What are the 10 things that you should know about his tariff moves? How does it impact India? How is New Delhi reacting? What about the United States? How will this play out for American consumers and businesses? And their allies in Europe, will they retaliate? We can tell you that China will. It's been the worst hit with more than 60% tariffs. We'll discuss what this means for China's struggling economy. And is this the end of multilateral trade? So a lot of ground to cover here. Also in focus, the Philippines dares China with its game-changer F-16 jets. In West Asia, it's back to square one with Israel beginning an offensive to split Gaza. In Washington, is Elon Musk leaving Doge to steady his businesses? And what's the record 25-hour speech that is making headlines? We'll tell you how it's an endurance test. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Hungary says it will quit the International Criminal Court. The decision comes as Prime Minister Viktor Orban hosts his Israeli counterpart. The tribunal has accused Benjamin Netanyahu of war crimes in Gaza as he faces an ICC arrest warrant. But Budapest says it will not act against Netanyahu, who is on his first trip to Europe since 2023. Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets Thailand's Prime Minister in Bangkok. The two leaders agree to upgrade their relationship to a strategic partnership. The Indian Prime Minister is in Thailand to attend the BIMSTEC summit. Tomorrow he will leave for Sri Lanka. It will be his first trip there since Colombo got a new president. Ugandan president arrives in South Sudan. It comes just days after South Sudan arrested its first vice president, triggering fears of a return to civil war. Uganda has long been involved in South Sudan. Last month, it sent troops to support the president of the world's youngest nation. Nepal's capital Kathmandu blanketed in heavy smog as wildfires rage across the country. The air pollution levels are among the worst in the world. The Himalayan nation sees a spate of wildfires annually, usually beginning in March, but their number and intensity have worsened in recent years. And the UK's charity watchdog opens a probe into Sentebale. It's the African organization co-founded by Prince Harry, who stepped down as its patron after a boardroom battle. The charity's chairperson has accused the British prince of bullying and cover-up. Harry has called these allegations blatant lies.
They charge us, we charge them less, so how can anybody be upset?
We're going to fight these tariffs.
This is not the act of a friend.
The global economy will massively suffer.
Tariffs, one of the many things you learnt in school. You may remember reading about it in your textbook. Some of you may have thought, why bother? It's not like I'll ever use it in life. Well, now we know how wrong we were. Tariffs will probably be the word of the year, and if Donald Trump has his way, maybe even the word of the decade. Yesterday was his big Liberation Tariff Day. President Trump held a special event at the White House. The stage was decked in American flags and Trump walked out to a big round of applause and music. Then came the big speech. Trump spoke for almost 1 hour. He brought in charts. He made false accusations at countries and he promised liberation for Americans.
China. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. They watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream. Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen.
After the speech, Trump signed an executive order. With one stroke of the pen, he ripped up the global trading order. He effectively started a global trade war, and at the center of it are reciprocal tariffs. We have explained this before. These are basically tit-for-tat tariffs. You impose 10%, I will impose 10%. That is the definition of reciprocal tariffs. But Trump's version is a bit different. Tonight, we'll tell you about this tariff regime. In fact, we've split it into 10 parts. The 10 things that you must know about this move. Number one, Trump has not gone for full reciprocity, which is a deviation from his original plan. Initially, he wanted to go beyond reciprocity. He said he won't just look at tariff rates, he will also look at non-tariff barriers like subsidies or tax cuts. That approach would have been even more devastating, but as it turned out, Trump did not go that way. The current rates are less than reciprocal. He has called it kind tariffs.
I call this kind reciprocal. This is not full reciprocal. This is kind reciprocal. But what we do is we cut it in half. We charge them.
So what are these kind rates? That's our second highlight. Trump has unveiled a 10% baseline tariff. This will apply to all goods entering the United States, basically a blanket tariff. And this will come into effect on Saturday. For some countries, this is also the only rate, like the United Kingdom, Brazil, Singapore, Australia, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. Trump says these countries charge American goods 10% tariff, so the reciprocal rate is also 10%, meaning only the baseline applies to these countries, the ones that I just mentioned. Which brings us to the third highlight. Around 60 countries face customized tariff rates. These are over and above the 10%. I'll quickly go through some of them. The White House says China's tariffs are 67%. The reciprocal rate is 34%. Remember, China already faces 25% US tariffs, so the total comes to over 50%. The White House claims that Europe imposes 39% tariffs, and the reciprocal is 20%. For Japan, it is 24%. For India, it is 27%. For Israel, 17%. For Pakistan, 30%. For South Africa, 31%. South Korea, 26%. And Taiwan, 32%. These are the tariffs on major countries. They will be imposed on the 9th of April. That's next Wednesday. Trump channeled his reality TV persona while announcing them. With a chart in hand, he rattled out the rates.
China, 67%. European Union, 39%. Vietnam, 90%. Taiwan, 64%. We're going to charge them 32%. Japan, 46%. They would charge us 46%. India, very, very tough. Very, very tough. They charge us 52%. Switzerland, 61% to 31%. Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia. Oh, look at Cambodia, 97%. The United Kingdom, 10%. South Africa, 60%, 30%.
Next is highlight number 4. Trump announced a special rate for foreign automobiles, a 25% tariff. Say you're importing a car made in Germany or China or France. Then the importers must pay 25% tariff. This applies to cars made anywhere in the world. And this tariff came into effect this morning. I know we've thrown a lot of numbers at you. But how did Trump arrive at these numbers? Well, that is highlight number 5. The White House is talking about a very complicated formula, but some mathematicians have figured it out. First, they took a country's trade surplus with America. Then they divided it by their exports to America, and the result was then halved. Let's look at the example of China. China's trade surplus is $295 billion. Their exports to the US are $438 billion. If you divide that, you get 0.67. 67% is how the Americans calculated it. If you halve that and round it up, you get 34%, which is what Trump is now imposing on China. Economists are baffled by this calculation. They're calling it sixth grade maths. But some countries don't have to make these calculations, the likes of Iran, North Korea, and Russia, because Trump is not imposing tariffs on them. Iran, North Korea, and Russia, no tariffs. And that is highlight number 6. These countries are already under significant US sanctions. Their tariff rates are also quite high. So the White House says additional tariffs are not necessary. Besides them, the tariffs are comprehensive, perhaps too comprehensive, which is our 7th highlight. Trump has even targeted remote islands like Heard Island and McDonnell Island. These are technically part of Australia, but Trump has imposed a separate 10% tariff on them. Guess how much this island exports? Nothing, because no one lives there. Trump will have to ask penguins to cough up the money. Another example is Norfolk Island. This is yet another Australian overseas territory. It has been slapped with 29% tariffs. That's actually 19 points more than the tariffs on Australia. And how many people live there? Just 2,000. Even Australia's Prime Minister is scratching his head.
Norfolk Island, interestingly, is I think 29%. I'm not sure what Norfolk Island major exports are to the United States and why it's been singled out, but it has.
Remember Lesotho? Trump claimed that nobody had heard of this country. Yet he's slapping them with 50% tariffs, 50, which makes you wonder, what is the logic here? Thankfully, certain goods are exempt from these tariffs, and that is highlight number 8. There will be no extra tariffs on pharmaceuticals, also on copper, semiconductors, gold, and energy. Basically, all things strategic, no tariffs on them. Next is highlight number 9. Yesterday's rollout had a lot of logistical errors. It did not live up to the liberation hype, and I'll tell you why. Trump's chart showed India's tariffs at 26%. But then the White House said it was 27%. A couple of other countries also had such discrepancies. Plus, look at Taiwan. It is listed under a table called countries, even though the US does not recognize Taiwan's independence. If intentional, this is a bold statement, but chances are it's a mistake. And finally, the 10th highlight. How are markets reacting to Trump's Liberation Day? Not well. Japan's Nikkei lost almost 1,000 points today. It fell to an 8-month low. In India, the Sensex lost more than 320 points. In France, the CAC fell almost 240%. In Germany, the DAX fell more than 600 points. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng dropped 350 plus points. And as expected, it is worse in America. The S&P 500 was down 225 points in opening trade, and Dow Jones almost 1,500 points down. Everywhere you look, stocks are in the red, and this is just the start. Once the retaliation comes, the bloodbath may worsen. I guess it's time to brush up on those tariff lessons.
India, very, very tough. Very, very tough.
So Donald Trump's trade war is well and truly underway. He has spared no one this time, not even India. Some observers had different expectations. They believed that India would be left out because both sides are negotiating a trade agreement. India and the US, they've been talking about a trade deal. Trump himself said this a few days ago. So the hope was that he won't impose tariffs till those talks conclude. But that's not how it played out. Listen to this.
India, very, very tough. Very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left. And he's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing.
India is very tough, he said. He called Prime Minister Modi a great friend, but he imposed tariffs nonetheless. They will come into effect on the 9th of April. And what's the rate? 27%. Although Trump's chart, as we just told you, said 26%, the official order of the US government says 27%. And that chart had many such discrepancies. But for the moment, we'll focus on India. What will be the impact of these tariffs on India? How much would it cost the Indian economy? $34 billion. That's the cost. That's almost 1% of India's GDP. $34 billion, 1% of India's GDP, 0.9% to be precise. And which industries and sectors will be hit? We have a list. Electronics, worth $14 billion. Gems and jewelry, worth $9 billion. And automobiles and auto parts. They will be charged a different rate, though. Trump has announced a blanket 25% tax on automobiles and auto parts. That's for all countries. So the same 25% rate would apply to India too. This is only for auto exports, 25% tariffs. And auto exports in India's case is not a substantial amount. India does not export a lot of finished automobiles to the US, but it does supply auto parts. And this export is worth $2.2 billion. So broadly, these are the industries that will be hit. Now let's talk about the ones that are safe. Pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, and copper, steel and energy products. All these have been spared from the new Trump tariff regime. And what is India's response? The Commerce Ministry has issued a statement. It said New Delhi is, and I'm quoting, carefully examining the tariffs. It plans to take feedback from the industry. There is one line that stands out in the statement. Let me quote. The department is also studying the opportunities that may arise due to this new development. Now, the use of the word opportunities is interesting. How can India benefit from Trump's trade war? Is there a silver lining? Experts say there is. Look around the region. Other players have been slapped with far steeper tariffs, like China. Effectively, Chinese products will face 54% tariffs. That's the highest among all US trade partners. Vietnam comes next with 46% tariffs overall. Then you have Bangladesh at 37%. For India, the tariff is 27%. It's still a blow, but it could have been worse. And this gap between India and its neighbors may work in India's favor, specifically in three high-value industries: textiles, electronics, and machinery. Experts say that Trump's tariffs can open new doors for India. One example they give is that of Taiwan. It's the world leader in semiconductor supply, but if the supply chains shift from Taiwan, and if India emerges as an alternative, if it replaces Taiwan even partially, it would be a boost for India's economy. All of these are big ifs, but there's a possibility. New Delhi can start with some low-hanging fruits, stuff like packaging, testing, and low-end chip manufacturing. So that's one scenario, to harness the impending supply disruption. Similarly, India has opportunities in areas like machinery and toys. China currently dominates this space, but with tariffs as high as 54%, businesses will look elsewhere to make their goods, to cut costs and maintain their bottom line. So India is in a strong position, but to leverage this, India must reform. India must position itself to win new businesses. It must make structural reforms and offer compelling incentives to invite businesses. This includes building infrastructure and strengthening the logistics network. There's a lot of work to do. Trump's tariffs could push India towards making these changes. At the same time, India will have to manage Trump's unpredictability. Which brings us to the trade deal. The US wants India to make sweeping concessions. It wants India to reduce tariffs across the board, from energy to defense and even agriculture. Now, if India agrees to American terms, it could still evade the tariffs. But the price for this would be steep. If you lower the barriers on American goods, Indian manufacturers could lose out. If tariffs on farm products are reduced, Indian farmers would protest. And this is tricky, both economically and politically. So New Delhi will have to strike a tough balance. Our next story is for the American consumer. You're in for pain. Prices will go up. Whatever you plan to buy, a pack of avocados, a can of beer, a new car, your bill will be higher than before thanks to your president and his tariffs. Well, his logic is simple and skewed. He wants to cut the reliance on foreign goods, to bring jobs back to America and to make it great again.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy.
So tariffs have a patriotic packaging, and like most packaged stuff, there's more gas than substance. Because tariffs will make imported goods costlier, and that extra money will come from American wallets. This is how it works. Say an American company buys beer from Mexico or car parts from Canada. Now they have tariffs. So this company will have to pay extra, and the company will not eat the cost. It will pass it on to the consumers, and things will get expensive. In fact, we have a list of what will be the worst hit. The first is houses. Housing is the biggest purchase for most American households. 94% of American houses are made of lumber. And the US imports 1/3 of its lumber from Canada. Now, with tariffs in place, lumber prices will go up, and by extension, prices of houses will go up too. Second is cars. Trump has announced 25% auto tariffs on cars and car parts, and this came into effect today. Trump believes it will revive the US auto industry.
But such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all for this calamity. I blame former presidents and past leaders who weren't doing their job. They let it happen, and they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe.
But will it really? Will it help the US auto industry? Cars are the second largest purchase for most Americans. In 2024, the US imported around 8 million cars. That is around $240 billion in trade. It makes for nearly half of the sales. Most of these car makers rely heavily on international supply chains, mostly in North America. They produce vehicles in Mexico and Canada. Car parts are also manufactured there. So these new tariffs will affect all of it. We are talking about goods worth $460 billion. So car prices will certainly go up in the US, anywhere between $4,000 to $10,000 per vehicle. That is what economists estimate. Then we have fuel prices. America imports crude oil. More than 60% of it is from Canada. It is the largest foreign supplier of crude oil to the US. So tariffs could push up fuel prices too. The fourth product that will get expensive is alcohol. If you're a fan of Modelo or Corona, brace yourself. Mexican beer will cost more because of the new tariffs on beer and the aluminum cans that they come in. Same for bourbon, tequila, and Canadian whiskey. Long story short, your weekend drinks will burn a hole in your pocket. The fifth on this list is daily groceries like avocado and maple syrup. Nearly 90% of US avocados come from Mexico, 90%. So your guacamole will get pricier. There's also maple syrup. Canada accounts for 75% of its global production. So if you want to save money, pancakes without syrup is your new normal. Now, Trump believes that these tariffs will boost American companies. They will produce everything domestically and people will buy that stuff. Great idea on paper. But here's the problem. US manufacturers are not ready to meet the demand. It takes years to build supply chains from scratch. Until then, consumers pay the price. And this is just the beginning. Tariffs don't just stop at the grocery store or the gas pump. They ripple through the entire economy. Jobs get cut, businesses slow down, exports struggle. As prices climb, wages often do not keep up. All of this means inflation will rise, and that has raised fears of a recession.
We should be very concerned. The last time trade war on this scale has happened was in 1930s. Exactly in 1930, it was Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, and it led to a global recession worldwide. And if this trade war escalates, we could see a slowdown of the global economy on the scale of a global financial crisis of 2014 and possibly deeper. And this is the largest threat which would affect the whole world.
Yesterday, we told you about Goldman Sachs. It raised the possibility of a US recession to 35%. And now Barclays has flagged it too. It says there's a high risk that the US will enter recession. It is even driving bets on prediction markets. More than 50% are betting on the fact that America will slip into a recession. So the question is this short-term pain for long-term gain, or is it just pain all the way? Will it bring jobs back to the US, or will America end up paying the price literally? We'll be tracking this for you.
They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic.
Europe has everything it needs to make it through the storm. We are in this together. If you take on one of us, you take on all of us.
Tariffs are like a heavyweight boxer's punch. Blunt, messy, and capable of knocking out entire industries. Donald Trump is in the ring, dealing back-to-back blows. But not all opponents are hitting back immediately, even when he's calling them names. Listen to this.
European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%.
So Trump is imposing a 20% tariff on Europe, which came as a shock to them because Europe is one of America's biggest allies and trading partners. Look at the numbers. In 2023, the European Union exported goods worth over $500 billion to the US. In 2024, it was the largest single market for US goods exports. So the tariffs felt like a stab in the back, especially from its closest ally.
I know that many of you feel let down by our oldest ally. Yes, we must brace for the impact that this will inevitably have. Europe has everything it needs to make it through the storm. We are in this together. If you take on one of us, you take on all of us. So we will stand together and stand up for each other. Our unity is our strength.
They shouldn't be too surprised, though. Last month, Trump imposed tariffs on EU steel and aluminium products. And Europe responded with countermeasures. They sanctioned American goods worth around $28 billion. So this one was a long time coming. Germany's car industry is sweating. Italian fashion houses are recalculating their losses. And French champagne makers, let's just say, there's not much popping out of bottles right now. But Europe says it is prepared for this. They are ready with so-called countermeasures. It's not clear what they are, but despite the frustration, Europe is trying to stay calm.
We have always been ready to negotiate with the United States to remove the remaining barriers to transatlantic trade. At the same time, we are prepared to respond. We are already finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel. And we're now preparing for further countermeasures to protect our interests and our businesses if negotiations fail.
Von der Leyen's message was mirrored in EU capitals. Germany called for negotiations. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni called the tariffs wrong, but she's pushing for a deal. France called the levies a catastrophe. Spain is unveiling plans to protect its economy, so the response is mixed. But the sentiment is the same. Europe knows that it has options, but it's also wary of escalating things too quickly.
The U.S. administration has decided to attack this link unilaterally. And I would like to stress this by deploying, as you know, an absolutely unprecedented tariff package of 25% for our cars and 20% for practically all products imported from the European Union. In short, it is a return to 19th century protectionism.
The U.S. government is therefore treading a path that will only end up with losers. The European Union has the strongest single internal market in the world with 450 million consumers, and that gives us strength. We are available for talks with the U.S. government to avert a trade war, and the President of the Commission has already made this clear. Germany and Europe continue to stand for free trade.
So what's the game plan? Well, for starters, Europe is considering some strategic countermeasures, and if there's one target they've got, it is big tech. Your Apple, Meta, Amazon, X. They've had a pretty smooth ride in Europe, especially when it comes to taxes. They often route profits through low-tax countries.
The big tech companies have an incredible dominance in Europe and are largely exempt from European taxes, so they benefit from it, and we do too, of course. The consumers and companies that use these companies simply take advantage of the offers that are available.
Well, that could change very soon. France has already hinted at a digital tax. Germany says it is on the table. So US big tech may be caught in the crosshairs of this trade war. Another option is restricting US companies from bidding on European government contracts or even limiting their intellectual property rights. That could put a dent in US firms looking to expand. French President Emmanuel Macron is pushing for this. He also wants European companies to pause investments in the US. But remember, all of these are only options at the moment, options that Europe does not want to exercise because it does not want to turn this into a full-blown trade war. They're still hoping for a deal.
The Americans are being given 14 days to enter into talks, and that's a smart move. Europe, we shouldn't be the hotheads, we shouldn't be the first to start the fire, but we should always try to extinguish the fire. The goal should be to de-escalate and avoid a tariff war, a tariff dispute.
Across the channel, the UK situation is a little different. Their tariffs aren't as severe as Europe. It's only 10% for the UK, so there is some relief. But London is not too thrilled about it. Negotiations are currently underway for a trade deal, and the hope is to soften the blow. The Brits say they're ready to hop on a plane to Washington if a deal seems within reach.
Let me be clear with the House. A trade war is in nobody's interests. And the country deserves, and we will take, a calm, pragmatic approach. That's why constructive talks are progressing to agree a wider economic prosperity deal with the US. That's why we're working with all industries and sectors likely to be impacted.
Well, here's the thing. Tariffs do not just affect governments and corporations, they hit regular people too. For the West, inflation is already a headache. And these new tariffs are not helping. So what happens now? The next few weeks will be crucial. Trade officials are meeting in Brussels and London to map out their next steps. Businesses are doing their best. They're behind the scenes lobbying, hoping to protect their industries without making things worse. Because this is not just about tariffs, it's also about leverage. It's about who blinks first. As Trump throws his punches, the West is figuring out exactly how to counter him without getting knocked down. So American allies want to take the middle ground. They want to talk to Trump. China, on the other hand, wants to hit back. China has vowed to retaliate. It has called Trump's tariffs bullying.
China has repeatedly stressed that there are no winners in trade wars and tariff wars, and protectionism is not a way out. The unilateral tariff hikes by the U.S. violate WTO rules, harm the common interests of people of all countries, and do not help solve the problems of the U.S. itself. It is clear to everyone that more and more countries are opposing the U.S.'s unilateral bullying actions, such as imposing tariffs.
Out of the entire lot, China faces the highest tariffs, a whopping 65%, that is if you add up yesterday's reciprocal tariffs and all the previous duties that Trump announced earlier. The total comes to some 65%. It's an all-out attack on Chinese exports. This is how Trump justified it.
So, if you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset? They will be, because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge.
Trump's tariffs could cripple China. The impact is already showing. Experts are assessing the potential damage to China's economy, and they paint a bleak picture. They say China's growth is all set to fall. It may fall by over 2 percentage points. China's currency, the yuan, is weakening. It has hit a 7-week low after Trump's announcement. Chinese stocks have also slumped. The markets, both in Hong Kong and mainland China, ended the day's trade in red. There could be more pain in the coming days. So can China avoid it? There are 2 factors to consider here. First is the state of China's economy. After years of decline, Beijing was hoping for a recovery this year. It had set a target of 5% growth. And the US market was key to achieving this target because it is their biggest market. Every year, China sends goods worth nearly $500 billion to the US. This is over 16% of China's total exports. It goes to the US, $500 billion. The new tariffs strike at the very heart of this business. If the tariffs stay, Chinese goods will become quite expensive in the US. Their demand is expected to fall, and so China's revenue from the US would fall. Credit ratings agencies are already worried about China's finances. Today, Fitch downgraded China's credit rating from A+ to A. Fitch has highlighted 2 problems. The first is weak finances of China's governments, both at the central and local level. Their finances are a mess. Their debt levels are very high and rising. And this is a major concern. Now, US exports could have helped mitigate it. But with these tariffs, China risks losing access to the entire American market, and that too for a broad range of products. So that is the first factor, government finances. The second factor is the state of US-China relations. Trump has named his price to lower tariffs. He wants more market access in China and almost 0 import taxes on US goods. So just like others, China too will have to negotiate a deal. But unlike others, this is going to be a tough conversation for Beijing. It's going to be much harder for them to strike a deal with Trump. The talks could take months. And remember, China faces the highest tariffs in Trump's plan. He will not scale back easily. He is also not on the best of terms with Chinese President Xi Jinping. So this is not going to be easy, whenever they start a conversation, that is. As for the tariffs, they will come into effect in less than a week. Beijing is trying hard to soften the blow. President Xi Jinping is making moves on various fronts. A few days back, he met with top CEOs from across the world, at least 40 of them, and the Chinese president tried to win them over. He promised them stable policies. In the same breath, he also attacked the United States.
We must jointly maintain an open and cooperative international environment. Some countries have engaged in small-scale activities, high walls and tariff barriers, politicized economic and trade issues, instrumentalized and weaponized them, and forced companies to take sides and make choices that violate economic laws and are not in line with market rules and the general trend of opening up.
That statement now sounds outdated because Trump has set the US and China on a collision course. A deal is a long shot. Beijing has warned that it will strike back. It has made no announcement so far. But we know that China does not have the luxury to wait this out. This is a situation that will not fix itself. Xi Jinping is up against his toughest challenge yet.
Liberation Day, waiting for a long time. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. Baseline tariff of 10%.
Human beings have traded for centuries, first from village to village, then kingdom to kingdom, and recently country to country. After the Cold War, trade became an engine of growth. I have some numbers for you. In 1989, trade made up just 38% of global GDP. By 2008, it was up to 61%. Most countries embraced this new reality, where trade was key to growth. And not just any trade, free-flowing multilateral trade. The world has invested a lot in this idea. We built a specialized agency called the WTO, the World Trade Organization. We created laws for freedom of navigation. We ran campaigns to reduce barriers. But yesterday, US President Donald Trump took a chainsaw to that order. He ripped up the global trading system. The question is, can it survive this onslaught? Well, it has to. Tariff or not, no country is 100% self-reliant. They have to buy things from abroad. So multilateral trade is not going to die. But its present form could change. Let's look at the World Trade Organization. This agency was created with very specific goals in 1995. Create rules for world trade, push for reducing barriers, and provide a platform to resolve differences. This was what the WTO was supposed to do. Trump could have taken his tariff complaints to the WTO, but he's not a big fan of this organization or any UN organization for that matter. He's already cut funding to the agency, the WTO. Plus, his allies say that the WTO has been hijacked by China, which is true to some extent. So what did Trump do? He decided to settle the issue outside the WTO with reciprocal tariffs. A lot of countries say that his tariffs violate the WTO rules. So they plan to sue Donald Trump at the World Trade Organization. We say good luck to them. WTO litigations often take years to complete, and Trump is blocking the appointment of a WTO judge, so the agency is deadlocked anyway. Nonetheless, it's a story in itself. It's true that developing countries charge higher tariffs, but in most cases, these are WTO compliant, meaning those tariffs are accepted under established trade rules. But Trump's tariffs are not. They are a direct attack on these established rules. If this continues, can the WTO survive? The agency's chief is confident. Let me quote from what she said. Members are saying to me, yes, we are concerned, but at the same time, we are using the system and we want to continue using it. I'm telling you that the bedrock of trade is here and it's not going anywhere. Confidence is good, but the ground reality is different. Faith in the trading system has eroded. The West feels that China has been given a free ride. Even here in India, the WTO is not all that popular. Recently, Indian farmers asked the government to leave the WTO. And this is a big problem because the success of any multilateral agency is based on trust. All parties should trust the agency. If not, it cannot succeed. Recent political tensions have also contributed to this. Just look at America and China. As their rivalry heated up, we saw both sides using trade barriers. They imposed tariffs and import quotas. These were not based on free trade principles. These were based on politics. As a result, global trade has suffered. In fact, let me go back to those numbers that I gave you. In 1989, trade made up 38% of the global GDP. By 2008, it went up to 61%. But in 2023, it came down to 58%. So the takeaway is pretty clear. Global trade is losing momentum. It is happening. It was happening even before Donald Trump's election. He's simply speeding things up. If these trends are here to stay, what does the future look like? A lot of countries are looking at bilateral options, including India. A top Niti Aayog official pushed for this. He says, take care of issues with bilateral trade deals. You can't always depend on the WTO. And that makes a lot of sense with Trump. But it does raise questions. For example, let's say India cuts tariffs on American EVs. Wouldn't European EV makers demand the same? And Japanese and Korean ones? A multilateral trading order avoided this confusion, but now every government will have to deal with it. And all of this makes the future of global trade uncertain. We could be looking at a period of disruption in the form of tariffs, in the form of militarized shipping lanes, and in the form of sanctions. It's proof that all agencies and systems must reform continuously. If not, they will be swept aside by time. China's drills around Taiwan have ended, and Beijing has achieved two things: cheap propaganda and a bad reputation. But they've also pushed Donald Trump to commit more to the region. He has approved a major weapons deal for the Philippines. Manila will get 20 F-16 fighter jets, and this is a major boost for their security needs. This deal is worth $5.5 billion. The jets will come with long-range air-to-air missiles and guided bombs. And the timing is significant. Last week, Taiwan received a new batch of F-16 jets, and now it is the Philippines. Fun fact, the Philippines has not had a frontline jet since 2005. They will now get 20, and they want more. That is bad news for China. Their aggressive drills are only pushing the region towards the United States. Our next report has more.
Donald Trump has returned to the White House with a mission: contain China. And it involves Uncle Sam's closest ally in the Indo-Pacific, the Philippines. The Trump administration is drastically recommitting to the region. Why do we say this? Because of some latest developments. The Trump administration has approved a major weapons deal for the Philippines. The country will now get 20 F-16 fighter jets. But these aren't just any F-16s. These will be the F-16 Block 70 and 72, the most advanced and lethal version of the aircraft yet. These will be equipped with modern radars, advanced targeting pods, long-range air-to-air missiles and guided bombs. The deal is worth over $5.5 billion, and the deal includes a large weapons package. The Philippine Air Force will receive over 100 air-to-air missiles, including the long-range AMRAAM. The jets will also come with around 100 guided bombs, including the 2,000-pound Mk-84 bunker buster bombs. This is a major boost for Manila's security needs, and China is fuming.
Any defense and security cooperation between the Philippines and other countries should not target third parties, harm third-party interests, threaten regional peace and security, or exacerbate regional tensions.
The Philippines has long trusted the U.S. for its weapons. Manila is the largest recipient of American military assistance in the Indo-Pacific. Some major platforms include the Typhoon missile system, a land-based weapon that fires Tomahawk missiles against maritime threats. Then, most of the air logistics fleet of the Philippines is American. This includes the C-130 Super Hercules cargo planes and the UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters. The Philippines also buys infantry fighting vehicles and small arms like rifles and mortars from the United States. And now, they will get modern lethal F-16 fighter jets. But the timing of this deal is important. The Philippines is buying a frontline fighter aircraft for the first time since 2005. The reason? China. China has increased its aggressive behavior in the region. Beijing recently concluded drills around Taiwan. Meanwhile, Chinese boats often violate maritime boundaries of the Philippines. From spraying water cannons to deliberate rammings, Chinese ships repeatedly harass Filipino boats. Beijing's actions have pushed Manila even closer to Washington. Relations between the Philippines and the United States go way back. They have been allies for decades. The two signed a mutual defense treaty in 1951. This allows the United States to station troops in the Philippines. There are currently 9 American bases on Filipino soil, and these are strategically important for Washington. These bases monitor Chinese maritime activity. They also ensure freedom of navigation through the South China Sea. Filipino President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. says the 20 F-16 fighter jets are just the beginning. He wants to buy an additional 20 jets once the first batch is delivered. Marcos Jr. also wants to increase freedom of navigation drills in the region, and he's asking other democracies to participate. He has already invited India, Japan, South Korea, and Australia. Clearly, China's brash behavior is only uniting others and isolating Beijing.
Let's turn to West Asia. The situation in Gaza is worsening. Israel conducted airstrikes last night. At least 77 Palestinians were killed. Israel says it struck sites belonging to Hamas. Clearly, the ceasefire deal is in tatters. Negotiations have come to a full stop. Israel and Hamas are busy playing the blame game. Both sides accuse each other of violating the deal. Only the first phase was somewhat successful. The first phase of the ceasefire deal, when Hamas released 33 hostages and Israel stopped its offensive. But the deal had two more phases. Hamas was supposed to release all the Israeli hostages, and Israel was supposed to withdraw from Gaza. Also, Gaza was supposed to be rebuilt. The opposite is happening now. Israel is switching gears. The Israeli Defense Force, or the IDF, has launched another major offensive. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has approved it himself. He wants to achieve two things: control Gaza and break it up. Let me explain. Israel is trying to seize more territory in Gaza. Israeli troops have created multiple buffer zones. They control more than 60 square kilometers of the Gaza Strip, which is almost 30% of Gaza, under Israeli control. Now, Netanyahu wants more. That's part one of his plan. And the second part, to dissect the Gaza Strip into multiple parts. Listen to this.
Last night in the Gaza Strip, we switched gears. The IDF is seizing territory, striking the terrorists and destroying the infrastructure. We are also doing something else. We are seizing the Morag corridor. This will be the second Philadelphia, an additional Philadelphia corridor, because we are now dividing the Strip and increasing the pressure step by step, so that they will give us our hostages.
So that's Netanyahu's plan: divide Gaza and create another corridor, which will be controlled by the Israeli army. It will be called the Morag route. Morag was once a Jewish settlement. It stood between the cities of Rafah and Khan Yunis, but now it is abandoned land. Let me show you on a map. The Gaza Strip has two corridors. Netzarim is in the north. It caters to the Gaza city. And Philadelphia is in the south. It borders Egypt and caters to Rafah. Israeli troops control both these corridors, and now they want to create a third one. Like I said, they're calling it the Morag route. A corridor between two corridors. Netanyahu announced his plans last night. This is what he said.
And as long as they do not give them to us, the pressure will increase until they do. We are determined to achieve the objectives of the war, and we are acting relentlessly, and with a clear line and a clear mission. And with God's help and that of our heroic soldiers, we will also achieve them.
So Netanyahu's solution is more war, except he has tried that already. We are 1.5 years into this war. Gaza is completely ruined. More than 50,000 Palestinians are dead. More than 1 million have been displaced. But Hamas remains active. They continue to operate in the Gaza Strip, and they still have the hostages. But Hamas too is to be blamed here. They refuse to free the hostages. They keep firing rockets into Israel. Hamas fired projectiles last night as well. Naturally, Israel wants to keep fighting, at least until all hostages are released. This has been Israel's ask since day one. You know who's paying the price for all of this? Ordinary civilians, both in Gaza and in Israel. They are all fed up. Israelis are rejecting Netanyahu's new plans. Families of hostages are demanding diplomacy, not more war.
The escalation of the military attack causes us great anxiety because we know that a military operation is a great threat to the living hostages, obviously, but it's also a threat to the deceased hostages that we might lose them forever. I think that military force can only go so far, and at some point we have to use diplomacy.
The timing of Israel's new offensive is also important. The US is ramping up its military presence in the region. More F-35 stealth jets have been flown in. A second aircraft carrier is now in the Red Sea. We already told you about the B-2 stealth bombers in Diego Garcia. That's America's strategic base in the Indian Ocean. The US says it wants to keep the Houthis in check. But the deployments are also a message to Iran. Tehran will have to think twice before supporting its proxies like the Houthis, Hezbollah and Hamas. The US deployments will keep Iran and the Houthis at bay. This eases pressure on Israel. They don't have to worry about multiple threats. They can focus only on Hamas and Gaza. That's what Netanyahu is doing. But how will this help? Until when will this cycle continue? 1.5 years of war, and we are back to square one. Elon Musk is having a rough time. He suffered a $20 million blow. Voters rejected his choice for a Supreme Court candidate from Wisconsin, whose campaign he pretty much bankrolled. Tesla has reported its biggest sales drop ever, falling 13% in the first quarter. There are cases of vandalism and protests against Tesla in the US and abroad. And now, on top of all of this, there are rumors that Musk is leaving Doge. That's the Department of Government Efficiency. Reports quoting Trump's inner circle claim that the tech billionaire has overstayed his welcome in Washington. So will his polarizing stint end soon? What's behind this speculation? And what does a Doge exit mean for Musk and the department? Here's a report.
If there is one place in the world where Tesla should be prospering, experts say it is Norway. Here, electric vehicles make up 90% of car sales. But so far this year, Tesla sales have slumped 12% in the Scandinavian country. The electric car maker is doing even worse in other European countries, like France, Sweden, and Denmark. In fact, the world over, Tesla sales are on the downward slope. Global sales are down 13% in the first 3 months of the year. This is the company's worst quarter since 2022. And this is hardly the only problem for Elon Musk, the chief executive of Tesla. Tesla's stock has plunged by roughly half since mid-December, when it hit a record high. Tesla dealerships have been vandalized in the US and abroad. There are protests against the company, as well as against Doge. This is the Department of Government Efficiency, which, as you may know, is also headed by Musk. His chainsaw-wielding work, including the firing of about 200,000 federal employees, has fueled growing unease. And this week, Musk suffered another setback. Wisconsin voters rejected his choice for a state Supreme Court candidate whose campaign was heavily bankrolled by Musk. And now, to top it all off, there are rumors that Musk may have overstayed his Washington welcome. Report after report has quoted mega insiders, apparently, including Trump's cabinet members. They say that Musk is stepping back from his role as Doge head, and that this transition will happen in the coming weeks so that Musk can focus more on his businesses. This news comes soon after Musk made this statement in an interview.
It's actually disadvantageous for me to be in the government. My companies are suffering because I'm in the government.
Even Trump has acknowledged it.
I think he's got a big company to run, and so at some point he's going to be going back.
Musk claims that Doge has already accomplished most of the work it set out to do, which may not be true. Musk had a $1 trillion goal, and by Doge's estimates, he has saved U.S. taxpayers $140 billion. So while the math is not mathing, Musk's Doge exit speculation has made some people very happy, leading to a 6% rise in Tesla shares yesterday. So how true is it? Is the tech billionaire really leaving his side hustle as the Washington Chainsaw Man / cheerleader? Well, the world's richest person has answered this million-dollar question himself. Earlier today, Musk took to X and called the reports of his departure fake news. The White House press secretary has backed him. She has called it garbage. So they have dismissed the rumors, and at least publicly, Trump has shown nothing but admiration for the man who has spent millions to help elect him. Earlier this week, he said that, "I'd keep him as long as I could keep him." So the Musk-Trump bromance seems to be alive and well. That said, Musk's tenure is on a ticking clock. He was hired as a special government employee. This means that he can only work 130 days in a year. He will hit this deadline on 30th of May. So what does this mean for Doge and Musk's Washington stint? Under Trump's executive order,
Doge is set to continue until 2026. And as for Musk, he may look for the exit door. But according to experts, it is highly plausible that he will retain an informal role in Washington. So there could be other ways to slash and bash federal bureaucracy, even though Musk's Doge days may soon be over.
Politics and sports seem very different, but if you look closely, they share some qualities. They both demand resilience and endurance from those who choose to take part. And this week, US Senator Cory Booker proved it. He delivered a record-breaking speech. He spoke for 25 hours. He did not stop to eat. He did not sit down. He did not even go to the bathroom. So how did he endure a speech that long? And what are some of the other longest speeches ever delivered? Here's a report.
We have a president who's come in, and one of the first things he's done in 71 days.
When Cory Booker stood on the US Senate floor, his smart ring repeatedly asked if he was working out. At one point, it recorded his heart rate shooting up to more than 100 beats per minute and staying there for some time. But the 55-year-old senator was not exercising. He was delivering a speech, the longest speech in the chamber's history. It went on for 25 hours straight, during which Booker didn't stop to eat, he didn't go to the bathroom, he didn't even sit down.
These are not normal times in America. And they should not be treated as such.
During his speech, Booker condemned the Trump administration. But this is not why he's making headlines the world over. Booker's talkathon has led people to hail him as an endurance athlete and speculate whether he was wearing a catheter or an adult diaper. According to his communications director, he was not, and there were periodic breaks as colleagues asked him questions. But for the most part, Booker was talking alone. So how did he manage to do it? The senator started speaking on Monday evening and continued to talk until Tuesday night. He says he stopped drinking water since Sunday night. His logic was simple. He didn't want to stop to use the bathroom because that would involve yielding the floor for a break, allowing the Senate to move on. And that's not all. He even fasted for days leading up to the speech. His efforts would certainly make doctors raise their eyebrows. But nevertheless, delivering a speech for 25 hours is no mean feat. Going for that long without using the bathroom can raise the risk of kidney stones and infection. The dehydration can make muscles cramp up, which Booker says he experienced. Dehydration can also cause fatigue. It can make it even harder to stand for a long period of time. The lack of food can make people dizzy. Plus, speaking for so long requires a lot of cognitive energy. And this ordeal is made worse with the lack of food, water, and sleep. It is indeed an endurance test. But Booker is not the only one to have gone through with it. The duration for the longest speech in history stands at 90 hours and 2 minutes. It was achieved by Nepal's Anantaram in 2018. Many politicians have delivered long, continuous speeches as well, like 24 hours and 18 minutes of speech by a US senator in 1957, or a speech lasting 23 hours and 51 minutes by a Scottish parliamentarian in 2004. So how do people deliver these seemingly superhuman speeches? According to research, it has more to do with the mind than the body. When people are performing a demanding task, it could be preparing for a test or playing a sport, it all comes down to motivation. Studies show that motivation can help people overcome exhaustion and push them to continue the task. This applies to delivering a speech as well. It explains why people can power through, and it goes to show how humans can push the limits of their body when their spirits are high.
There's so much liberation happening today. Liberation from a booming stock market, liberation from falling inflation, and from economic prosperity. This has to be a unique move in political history because there's not a single country on earth that is supporting this policy. That must be some sort of record. I mean, America has taken a lot of wrong decisions. Just think back to when they invaded Iraq. Even then, good old Britain stood by the Americans. But now the US has lost London too. It's a sign of too much liberation. Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese takes a tumble on stage during his election campaign. Protesters in Georgia get creative with face masks to defy a government crackdown. And US engineers reveal the world's smallest pacemaker, which is the size of a grain of rice. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1984, Rakesh Sharma became the first Indian in space. He was part of the Soviet Soyuz mission. He stayed on the Soviet space station for 7 days and 21 hours. Till date, Rakesh Sharma is the only Indian citizen to have travelled to space. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
ऊपर से भारत कैसा दिखता है आपको?
जी मैं बगैर किसी झिझक के कह सकता हूँ कि सारे जहां से अच्छा।
greeting you with aloha and namaste.
I love India.
Presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India, what we saw in Kashmir.
How do you see Trump's America?
Yes, the current administration behaves differently from the previous administration.
Are you saying that there are foreign powers who are trying to bring down the current government in Syria?
Exactly.
Iran, maybe Russia too.
Prime Minister Modi committed to South-South, cooperation.
Not over 50%.
Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.